Forgiving him was the hardest thing I've ever done. But when I opened my grandmother's Bible, I heard God's voice for the first time. And he told me to forgive the man who almost destroyed my family. I forgave him, and our hearts grew closer than ever. But love has a way of revealing truths. And I wasn't ready for what loving Adrian Castellano would cost me. Hello. My name is Xena Miller. Yesterday I married Adrian Castellano, and I'm still trying to understand what that means. Yesterday I was a creative director. I had my own office, my own name, my own life. Today, I'm married to a billionaire CEO the world listens to when he speaks. And now, less than 24 hours later, I'm stepping off a yacht that was supposed to be our honeymoon. Honeymoon. But was it real? If this was a contracted marriage, why did the way he looked at me make it feel like anything but fake? A honeymoon cut short by a work emergency. Of course it was. I tell myself this is normal, that this is what powerful men do. That work always comes first. But the way Adrian stands beside me, silent, controlled, already calculating his next move, tells me something bigger is happening. I can feel it, in the tension in his jaw, in the way his silence feels heavier than words. And that's when it hits me. This marriage didn't ease him, it sharpened him. I don't know if I married my protector, or stepped into a war I don't yet understand. And as the car pulls away from the marina, my thoughts drift, not forward, but back. Back to the moment everything changed. And the story begins. Less than 24 hours later, she stood beside him as his wife while his company hovered on the edge of war. Sabatian, a man who had worked alongside Adrian for years, trusted, polished, apparently not patient enough. He pushed a product early, directly against orders not to. 5 years, a flawless record, apparently not flawless enough. Pride had grown impatient. Ambition had grown louder. And now the honeymoon was over before the salt had even dried on her skin. Adrian Castellano, her husband, didn't argue. He never does. He's the kind of CEO who believes control is a language and silence is a strategy. The kind of man who doesn't raise his voice because things simply move when he decides they should. Adrian stood beside her, composed as ever, tall, controlled, untouchable. But this time, there was a crack in his stern, clenched jaw. He argued with himself in silence, and she could tell whatever he was holding back was boiling over. She watched him from the corner of her eye, heart pounding. Was this regret, anger, or something far more dangerous? She already knew this much. Her husband would destroy Sabatian in more ways than one, and she didn't want to know the details. The moment Sabatian pushed the product launch early, something in Adrian snapped back into place. The Ice King returned. Sabatian moves. Adrian came home furious. Not the kind of anger that explodes. The kind that tightens the jaw, stills the body, and sharpens the mind into a weapon. Sabatian had pushed the product early, against direct orders, against logic, against Adrian. The honeymoon ended that day. Business called, and Adrian Castellano answered. The elevator doors slid open. Luca stood there, tablet in hand, eyes cautious. "Boss," Luca said quietly, falling into step beside him. "Are you sure you want to do this today?" Adrian's posture was straight, shoulders squared, stride unhurried. But his hands were clenched, knuckles pale. "He wanted a launch," Adrian said, eyes forward. "He's going to get one." Luca swallowed, glancing sideways at him. That tone means somebody's about to lose their job. Adrian didn't look at him. His voice was calm. Too calm. Somebody's about to lose their freedom. His voice carried authority, charm, certainty. Then the doors burst open. Adrian walked in like a storm that didn't need wind. The room went silent. Sabatian's face drained of color for half a second before he forced a smile. "Adrian, You weren't invited. Adrian didn't sit, didn't blink. This meeting ends now. Sabatian gave a light laugh, adjusting his cufflinks. Respectfully, you can't just barge in and disrupt a... Adrian raised one hand. No. The word landed like a gavel striking wood. The board shifted in their seats. Veronica McNeil, 58, stern but compassionate eyes, sat up straighter. William Morris, late 60s, gray beard, folded his hands slowly. Margaret Chen, mid-30s, her pleasant smile faded as she studied Adrian's expression. Adrian nodded once at Luca. Luca walked around the table, placing folders in front of every board member. The paper thudded softly against polished wood. Sabatian's smile twitched. What is this? Adrian's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Proof, Sabatian scoffed. Proof of what? Adrian clicked the screen. Graphs appeared. Transfers, offshore accounts, shell companies. One by one, the board members' expressions changed. Veronica whispered, breath-catching, "Oh my God." William's eyes narrowed. Sabatian. Sabatian laughed, but it came out sharp, brittle. This is ridiculous. Adrian didn't blink. You embezzled money. Sabatian stepped forward, palms out. I did not. Click. You leaked confidential information to competitors. Sabatian's voice rose, breath quickening. That is a lie. Click. You tried to push the launch early so you could skim more money off the top. Sabatian's face drained completely. William Morris leaned forward, voice calm, dangerous. Let him finish. Sabatian snapped, fists clenching. I will not stand here and be embarrassed after all I've done for this company. Adrian's tone didn't change. Security. The doors opened, footsteps echoed. Sabatian's breathing sped up. He looked around the room, searching for allies. You cannot push me out, over my dead body. Veronica's voice went cold. Sit down. The vote was quick, 24-0. Sabatian's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Adrian stared at him, eyes steady. How dare you steal from this company? Sabatian lunged forward, desperation spilling into rage. Security grabbed him. You're making a mistake, Sabatian shouted, veins visible in his neck. Adrian stepped closer, voice dropping, lethal. If you leak anything to the press, we leak everything you did. Sabatian's eyes burned with hatred as he was dragged out. The boardroom stayed silent, because they all understood something. Adrian Castellano was not ruthless without reason. Later, Adrian sat alone in his office, the city stretching beneath him. His jaw was tight. His hands rested on the desk, fingers spread, grounding himself. Wrath still buzzed under his skin. A knock. Come in, he snapped. The door opened. Xena stepped inside, holding a lunch bag from his favorite place. Adrian froze. It was subtle, but his shoulders dropped a fraction. His breath shifted, like his body recognized peace before his mind could. She smiled softly. Hi. Adrian blinked. Xena, what are you doing here? She stepped closer, her heels quiet on the floor. I wanted to surprise you. This was big, Adrian. I wanted to be here. His throat worked as he swallowed. She set the bag down, then walked to him and wrapped her arms around him. His hands hovered in the air, unsure, tense. Then slowly, carefully, he held her. Tight. Like she was the only real thing left in his world. She kissed his forehead. I'm proud of you. His voice came out low, almost rough. You shouldn't be here. She pulled back, brows knitting. Why? He stared at her, jaw tightening again, eyes dark like he was holding something back. Then quietly, because I don't deserve you. Her heart squeezed. She smiled anyway, lifting his chin slightly. Too late. You're stuck with me. His lips twitched. Almost a smile. Almost. Adrian looked calm again, but inside him, guilt was eating through the walls. Because the money Sabatian stole was not the only money hidden. And some of those shell companies were connected to someone Adrian never spoke about. That night, Adrian poured whiskey and stared out at the city, the glass pressed lightly to his lips, his reflection staring back at him like an enemy. He looked like a man watching a war coming, and knowing he started it. The trial ended the way Adrian always said it would, quietly, efficiently, with no loose ends left for the world to see. Sabatian's name faded from headlines, reduced to legal documents and whispered boardroom conversations. But for Xena, nothing felt finished. The city moved on. The company moved on. Adrian moved on. She did not. She noticed how Adrian grew quieter after the verdict, how his jaw tightened when the news came on, how he stared out at the skyline like something was still hunting him. His control felt sharper now, more deliberate, like every movement was calculated to hide something beneath the surface. And the penthouse felt different, too quiet, too watched. One morning, after Adrian left for work, Xena stood in the middle of the living room, arms folded loosely across her chest, eyes scanning the walls like they could see back. The silence pressed against her ears. The air felt heavy, like secrets lived inside the marble and glass. Her curiosity shifted into something else, suspicion. She waited an hour, listened for footsteps, for elevators, for voices. Nothing. Her fingers brushed along the edge of a table as she moved through the hallway, footsteps slow and careful. Her shoulders were slightly tense, breath measured like she was entering someone else's mind instead of her own home. That was the day she started looking. Some love stories begin with destiny, others begin with secrets that refuse to stay buried. Xena Castellano didn't know yet that the man she loved had once been her family's quiet undoing. She didn't know that the empire she had married into had quietly shaped her fate long before she ever walked down the aisle. She only knew that something about Adrian Castellano felt layered, guarded, and deeper than he ever allowed her to see. And she was determined to peel back every layer. The penthouse was quiet that afternoon, the kind of quiet that only existed high above the city, where the world looked small and distant through endless glass walls and open sky. Sunlight spilled across the hardwood floors, catching on jars of paintbrushes, half-finished canvases, and the gold flecks in the paint she had been working with. The air smelled like oil paint, vanilla candles, and the faint ocean breeze drifting in from the balcony. This had become her sanctuary. Xena dipped her brush into soft gold paint, tracing gentle lines across the canvas. But her mind wasn't on art. It was on Adrian. She remembered the way he had kissed her goodbye that morning, his hands lingering at her waist, his lips warm against her temple. "You are my peace, mio amore," he had whispered, his Italian accent soft and intimate. He had held her like he meant it. And yet, something in his eyes had looked distant, like he was loving her while carrying a storm he refused to share. She loved him, truly, deeply. But love did not erase questions. She had married into wealth, power, and legacy. Castellano Industries was not just a company. It was an empire. And empires always came with shadows. She leaned back against the chair and stared at the skyline beyond the glass. She wondered what it took to build something this big. Who had been crushed along the way? What bridges had been burned? And whether love could survive when the truth finally surfaced. Her hand brushed against the wedding band on her finger. Simple, elegant, so small compared to the extravagant life she now lived. She smiled softly. Contract or not, the marriage had become real. He brought her flowers without reason. He listened when she talked about art. He built her this studio because he knew she missed working, missed creating, missed feeling useful beyond being Mrs. Castellano. He loved her in quiet ways, and she loved him in return. That was what made the questions so heavy. She walked toward the balcony, sliding the glass door open. The city stretched endlessly below her, millions of lives moving beneath the Castellano name, beneath Adrian's influence. She wondered what enemies came with this kind of power. She wondered what secrets came with this kind of man, and she wondered how long love could stay untouched by truth. Inside the penthouse, unseen by her, cameras blinked softly behind bookshelves and mirrored panels, and somewhere in Adrian Castellano's private files, documents sat locked away, signed, dated, and sealed with decisions that would change how Xena saw him forever. She thought she had married into a fairy tale. She had no idea she had married into a storm. 6 months into the marriage, Xena knew exactly why Adrian was called the Ice King. The man had impeccable self-control. There were moments when they would be kissing, his hands warm on her skin, his breath soft against her lips. And 10 minutes later, he would reach for his favorite brown liquid and down it in one smooth motion. He would kiss her cheek, lean in close, and whisper in accented Italian, "Mio amore, I have to make a call." This drove her crazy. He did this every single time. What she didn't know was that Adrian was doing this on purpose. He knew how to make her want him. He wanted her to want him. He wanted her completely. But his guilt would not let him touch her the way he truly wanted to. His guilt would not let him go too far. One morning, her mind snapped back from her thoughts as light streamed through the doorway. She squinted toward the glow and immediately knew it was him. His tall figure dominated the room even from a distance. She didn't need to see his face to feel his presence. Adrian Castellano commanded rooms without speaking. He was standing there, watching her. He looked at her with eyes full of want, but there was a tinge of sadness, something deeper, something unresolved. His dark eyes lingered on her, and she noticed the glass in his hand. Whiskey. At this hour. Why was he drinking whiskey so early in the morning? He didn't say a word. He drank it in one go and walked away. Xena slowly sat up, pulling the satin sheets over her legs. The fabric rustled as it moved, grounding her, calming her racing heart. She cupped her fingers together, knees drawn to her chest, and let out a deep breath. Who is Adrian Castellano? She asked herself. What is he hiding? Why is he acting so strange? Ever since she confronted him about moving her while she slept and changing her clothes, he had been different. Strange looks, strange behavior, quiet intensity. Her pride would not let her confront him again. Deep down, she still loved him. She didn't want to sabotage their relationship, so she made a plan. Every morning at exactly 7:30, Adrian left the penthouse. She would sleep one more hour, then explore. Room by room, floor by floor, searching for clues. She started in his library. Books filled the walls in English, Italian, French, and Spanish. He spoke 4 languages. She reached for an old leather-bound art history book, her fingers tracing the worn cover. It reminded her of college, of Miller Industries, of mock-ups, clients, and creative campaigns. She missed that life. She missed working. She missed being more than Mrs. Castellano. She remembered the conversation they had when they agreed she would quit her job. To avoid gossip, to avoid humiliation, to avoid whispers that she slept her way into power. She understood the consequences of marrying a billionaire. But understanding didn't erase longing. She turned the page, her mind drifting through memories, when a faint flash caught her eye. A small blinking light behind the bookshelf. A camera. I'm being watched, she thought. She put the book back, pretending she saw nothing, but she stored it in her mind. Billionaires needed security. She understood that. But was he protecting the penthouse? Or watching her? Her stomach growled, pulling her back to the present. She walked to the kitchen, but her curiosity had ignited. Weeks passed, and she continued exploring. Some rooms were locked. His office, a downstairs level. One day, she approached the metal door downstairs. High-level security, no access. A security guard appeared instantly, "Mrs. Castellano, I apologize. Mr. Castellano says this area is off limits." She raised an eyebrow but went back upstairs. She began to wonder what it took to build a dynasty like this. What enemies the Castellanos had. What bridges had been burned. After that day, security tightened. 4 guards instead of 2. Italian whispers she couldn't understand. She promised herself she would learn Italian, and as she returned to her studio, surrounded by sunlight and paint and luxury, she realized something. This marriage was love, but it was also mystery, and mysteries always came with consequences. She had been waiting for him to speak when he was ready. But waiting was starting to feel like hiding, and she was not built for hiding. She whispered to herself, "There's just one thing left to do. Confrontation." No one had ever been able to resist Xena Miller, and most definitely not Xena Castellano. And in the penthouse, Xena fell asleep with questions in her chest, unaware a war had started. Cliffhanger. The shower steamed the room, water pounding against the marble like a heartbeat that wouldn't slow down. The air was thick, warm, heavy with everything he had been holding inside. Adrian stood under the stream, head bowed, hands pressed against the tile. His shoulders were tense, jaw clenched, like he was bracing for something he knew was coming. Then the glass door opened. Xena stepped in, still wearing her white silk pajamas, not caring that the water soaked through the fabric. The silk clung to her skin, turning translucent, but she didn't flinch. Her face was calm, eyes steady, posture strong. She walked into the spray like she had already decided she was not leaving until she got the truth. She looked up at him and said quietly, "Listen, Adrian, you married a black woman, and we can support you, but we have been through a lot." Her voice was firm, grounded, the kind of tone that came from generations of women who refused to be silent. "My mama did not raise a weak woman," she continued, stepping closer, water running down her lashes. "So you are going to tell me what you are keeping from me." She reached for the control panel outside the shower and pressed something. A soft mechanical lock clicked. "I installed a high-level security lock on this door," she said calmly. "I am the only one who can unlock it." She met his eyes. "We stay here until you do." Adrian felt the weight on his chest crack. The wall he had built around himself, years of control, strategy, silence, collapsed in that moment. Everything came spilling out like a dam breaking. His hands dropped to his sides. His head bowed. "I bankrupted your father," he said. The words hit the steam like thunder. Before he could finish, whack. Her hand connected with his face. The sound was sharp, loud against the tile and water. Her heart was pounding so hard she felt it in her throat. Her hands were shaking, her breath uneven. "How dare you?" she said, voice trembling but strong. "Do you know what you did?" Her chest rose and fell fast. "My father was sick," she said. "He has congestive heart failure, high blood pressure. He has been struggling to breathe some nights, Adrian. And the financial stress, everything you did, made it worse." Her voice cracked, but she didn't look away. "He has been suffering because of you." Adrian's eyes dropped. His shoulders sagged. The water kept falling, but he felt cold. "I know," he whispered. Her hands trembled as she wiped water and tears from her face. The rest of the confession. He lifted his head slowly, voice low, breaking. "I knew you before the contract," he said. "I knew you 5 years before you ever knew my name." Her eyes widened. "I was in love with you long before we married. I watched you. I followed your work, your life. I wanted you. I had to have you." His words came out rushed, desperate. "I thought if I controlled the situation, you would choose me. I thought if I built the path, you would walk it." She stared at him, chest heaving. "Why would you do that?" she asked. "Why not just approach me? Date me like a normal person?" Her voice rose. "Why act like a psychopath control freak who hurt my family?" The words hurt. He flinched like she had hit him again, "You're right," he said quietly. "I didn't know how to be normal." She turned away, reaching for her phone on the stand outside the shower. Her hands shook as she unlocked the door. The door slid open. She walked out, water dripping from her pajamas, tears running down her face. After the truth, Adrian stayed there, water still running, steam still rising. He let out a long breath. The truth was out. He felt relieved, but it did not feel lighter. It felt worse. He pressed his forehead against the glass, eyes closing. He said to himself, "Honesty was supposed to save me. Why does it feel like I just destroyed everything?" Wet clothes clinging to her skin, her footsteps slow and heavy. Her heart was breaking, but something else was rising inside her. Clarity. She whispered to herself, "Lord, I need you more than ever." Behind her, Adrian stood alone in the steam, realizing that secrets do not disappear when spoken. They transform, and some truths don't bring freedom. They bring war. After Adrian confessed everything to Xena about what happened in the past, everything between them shifted. The penthouse felt quieter, heavier, like the walls themselves were listening. Adrian missed her, not just missed her, his heart ached for her. He missed her kisses, her touch, the warmth of her body curled against him at night. He missed the way she used to laugh in the kitchen while cooking, the way she would talk about nothing and everything at the same time. His heart pained him, but he hid behind work. He sat in his office late at night, staring at spreadsheets he wasn't really reading. His pen tapped against the desk. His jaw stayed clenched. He said to himself, "I did this. I broke her trust." Xena avoided him. No more late-night talks. No more cooking dinner. No more sitting beside him on the couch with her legs tucked under her. He would walk into the bedroom and stare at the empty pillowcase beside him, the satin sheets smooth and untouched. He ran his hand across the bed where she used to sleep and whispered to himself, "I miss you." He knew he had to give her space, but space felt like losing her. It was then Adrian realized something he had never learned in business school, never learned in boardrooms, never learned from power. Nothing in this life comes without consequence, and his actions almost tore his marriage apart. Adrian, at work, the Ice King. Fracturing Adrian was wallowing in self-pity and depression. Some days he barely worked. Other days he made sure he was so busy that no one would notice something was wrong. At least, that's what he thought. Luca noticed. Xena noticed, though she didn't say anything. The staff whispered. Some people wondered if the Ice King was melting, or cooling off even more. One afternoon, Margaret Chen approached him in the hallway. She studied his face, her brows knitting together. "You know, Adrian," she said gently, "it's just work. You can take a few days off if you need it." "That bad, huh?" he asked quietly. She nodded. "Yeah, you're not yourself. You look like an accomplished wrecking ball." He let out a small breath and gave a faint smile. It warmed her heart. Another board member, Daniel Roth, tapped him on the shoulder as Adrian walked by. "You know, Adrian," Daniel said softly, "whatever it is, this too shall pass." The words hit Adrian's chest like a weight dropping into water. He repeated them in his head later, watching his reflection in the elevator mirror. This too shall pass. For the first time in weeks, something inside him felt warm instead of cold. One day, Xena opened her grandmother's Bible. She hadn't meant to read it. She had only meant to touch it, feel the worn leather, the creased pages, the notes her grandmother had written in the margins years ago. But as she flipped through the pages, one verse stopped her. It felt like the words jumped off the page and grabbed her. "Be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other, just as in Christ God forgave you." Ephesians 4:32, NIV. Her breath hitched. Her fingers trembled against the thin paper. Her chest tightened so suddenly she grabbed it, her hand pressing against her heart like she could hold the pain still. It hurt. It convicted. It exposed. The scripture echoed in her mind over and over, like a whisper that wouldn't leave. Forgive him. Her heart wrenched inside her. She thought about her life, how she had lived without seeking God, how she had made decisions without prayer, without direction, without surrender. If I had sought God sooner, she thought, her mind spiraling. If I had asked for direction, maybe God would never have led Adrian into my path. Her throat tightened. But as she stared at the verse, another thought came, clearer than her own, a faint, audible voice. You know, Xena, you still need to forgive him. Her heart seized again. Conviction rolled over her like a storm wind, pulling at her chest, her breath, her pride. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't quiet. It was heavy, holy, unavoidable. She pushed herself off the bed, the satin sheets whispering beneath her skin, the soft swoosh of silk sliding as her hands lifted. She set the Bible down, her fingers lingering on the verse as if she could absorb it through her touch. Her legs felt weak as she walked down the hall. Her heart was pounding so hard, she wondered if he could hear it from across the penthouse. And then she saw him. Adrian stood in the kitchen, frozen mid-step, his phone in his hand. The lights were dim, the morning sun barely filtering through the glass. He looked tired, smaller. Dark circles sat under his eyes, and his shoulders seemed heavier than usual, like the weight of the world had settled on him overnight. He looked sad. Her chest tightened again. She didn't want to do this. She didn't want to forgive him. She wanted to stay angry, stay guarded, stay proud. But she knew she couldn't. She wasn't stupid enough to jeopardize her growing relationship with God for compromise because of her pride. She swallowed hard. She swallowed her pride. She forgave him in her heart first. Then she walked toward him. Emotional climax. Later that day, Adrian stood in the kitchen, phone in his hand, about to order takeout. Xena had stopped cooking. She stayed in her room or her studio now. He didn't go in there anymore. She needed space. As he opened the app, he heard footsteps. He looked up. Xena was walking toward him. His heart stopped. His hand froze around the phone. The air felt thick, heavy with everything they hadn't said. She walked up to him slowly and cupped his face with both hands. I forgive you. He stared at her, eyes wide, breath caught in his chest. She forgives me, he said to himself. After everything. She hugged him, pressing her cheek against his chest. He stood there for a second, stunned, then wrapped his arms around her tightly. He rested his forehead against her neck, his body shaking slightly. Tears slid down her eyes, soaking into his shirt. They stayed like that for a long time. She took his hand and led him to the couch. There's something I need you to know, she said softly. You may not understand this now, but going forward, let's just be honest with each other. No secrets. No secrets, he repeated. Whatever it is, we deal with it together. We face it together. I know you cannot tell me all of it now, but bit by bit, you need to bring your walls down and let me in. He kissed her hand, then her lips, slow and familiar. His heart softened in a way it hadn't in years. Yes, he said quietly. Every day. If there is something I need to tell you, I will. No holding back. Slowly, they started talking about everything and nothing. Adrian talked about his family. She talked about her future and her dreams. He told her about Damien. He's not just my brother, he said one night. He's my enemy. You must be careful. Damien is dangerous. She nodded, but something in her spirit felt unsettled. She wanted to tell him about her encounter with God, about how during the separation she prayed and felt a peace she had never known before, about how she felt called to forgive him. She said to herself, he married one woman. I am becoming another. She loved Adrian, but she loved her peace with God too. Her heart became fearful. Will he understand this new me? Or will this drive us apart? Xena's studio, domestic romance. Days and weeks went by. It became routine for Adrian to leave for work while Xena stayed in the studio he gifted her. He converted a guest room into a luxury professional studio after she told him she wanted to keep working creatively. Adrian began to notice how incredible Xena was. She could paint. She could sculpt. She could create anything. His favorite moment was working while she painted in comfortable silence. The studio smelled like fresh oil paint and clean air. Light poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows, painting the Miami coast in bright blues and white clouds. He sat on the sofa watching her move, her brush dancing across the canvas. He said to himself, "She looks like she's dancing." "Wow," he said aloud. "I like that color. It really makes that piece pop." She smiled and kept painting, letting her emotions flow onto the canvas. Abstract, realism, texture, raw feeling. He felt peace watching her. Ending forgiveness didn't feel dramatic the way Xena once imagined it would. There was no thunder, no instant relief, no moment where everything suddenly made sense. It was quieter than that. It felt like finally unclenching a fist she didn't realize she'd been holding, like letting her shoulders drop after carrying weight for too long. When Xena forgave Adrian, it wasn't because the hurt disappeared. It was because she understood something deeper. Forgiveness wasn't saying what happened was okay. It was saying this pain will not own me. She learned that forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. It doesn't rewrite the past. It doesn't make trust automatic. Forgiveness simply opens the door for healing to begin. And healing, she realized, is a process. A choice made daily, sometimes hourly. She didn't know everything. There were still parts of Adrian's world she hadn't seen. Still truths waiting for the right moment. Still scars that hadn't fully closed. But she knew this much. God had placed her in his path, not by accident, not by coincidence, not even by desperation alone. Somehow, through loss and pressure and decisions she never imagined making, she believed this meeting was not random, and even when she didn't understand the why, she held on to the belief that all things work together for good, even the painful ones, even the confusing ones, even the ones that almost broke her. Forgiveness didn't mean the relationship hadn't wounded her. It meant she trusted that something good could still grow from it. Adrian didn't ask her to rush. He didn't demand closeness. He didn't try to explain himself into being understood. For the first time, he simply stayed. Present, humbled, willing to be seen as he truly was. And that mattered more than any apology. Xena learned something else too. Love isn't proven by perfection. It's revealed by what someone does after the truth is exposed. She saw a man who had built his life on control learn to sit with discomfort, to accept accountability, to risk losing the one thing he couldn't calculate or replace. Her. When she looked back at where they started, a contract, a crisis, a marriage born from obligation, it felt almost unbelievable. Not because it was flawless, but because it survived honesty. What began as strategy had slowly become something real, something chosen, something fragile but sincere. Xena didn't know what the future would hold. There would still be challenges, still unanswered questions, still moments where faith would have to be stronger than fear. But she believed this: if God could bring her this far through confusion and pain, then there had to be goodness ahead she couldn't yet see. And for the first time since signing a contract she never wanted, Xena Castellano wasn't just surviving her life, she was trusting it, walking forward, with faith, with forgiveness, and with hope that whatever came next, even the hard parts, would be used for something good. Xena didn't know everything, but she knew this much: God had placed her in Adrian's path for a reason. She believed that even through pain, even through mistakes, even through wounds that still ached, something good would come from this. She had forgiven him. She had chosen peace. What she didn't know yet was how much that forgiveness would be tested. You've come to the end of this video, but not the end of the story. Thank you for staying with Xena and Adrian through this chapter. If this story touched you, moved you, or made you feel something, I'd love to know. Tell me which part of the story you enjoyed the most in the comments. If you're enjoying this journey, don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter. I hope to see you in the next video where their story continues. With love, Mrs. Gina Love Stories. Grazie, mia bellissima famiglia. This means, thank you, my beautiful family. And finally, this is for all my family. I want to decree a special blessing over you and your household. If you're hurting, may you heal. If you're sad, may the joy of God cover you. I pray love, joy, and peace over your lives. I pray that you encounter love in the most unexpected places, and that your life is filled with overwhelming, undeniable love. May you find that special love meant for you, your life destiny helper, the partner God has for you, at the right time and in the right way. Thank you so much for being a part of Mrs. Gina Love Stories. I'll see you in the next video. Don't forget to support by subscribing, liking this video, and commenting below what you loved or didn't love. It truly means the world to me, and yes, I read every single comment. Love Mrs. Gina Love Stories.